And whether it's the money, the promises, or whatever, it gets him.
How you feel about these rumors surrounding, Diddy and TD Jakes?
Man, what I think about it is this, when I grew up in the church, the sinners was not supposed to have the same atmosphere with the saints. You have to be able to separate the two. So I'm looking at him as a saint going to a party that ain't nothing but sin, drinking, maybe fornication, man on man, woman on woman, he on she.
I would have been swallowed up. Have you ever been swallowed up?
That dude was possessed with some kind of demon, man. He's possessed with some kind of demon. Wanna be in all this red, this dark rooms with the music blasting. It had to be a certain temperature, a certain type of music for the vibration they were saying. Come on, bro.
You're gonna want to sit down for this one. When Gene Deal talks, people listen. Why? Because this man lived in the shadows of hip-hop's most powerful empire. As Puff Daddy's former bodyguard, Gene wasn't just standing around in the background. He was right there in the mix. The parties, the meetings, the backroom conversations. He saw everything. And now, he's lifting the curtain on something nobody expected. The real reason Bishop T.D. Jakes stepped down from his position as pastor. To the public, Jakes' resignation looked clean, respectful, maybe even noble. But Gene is painting a much darker, messier picture. According to him, this wasn't just a man of God deciding it was time to rest. This was a move tied to something deeper, something involving Diddy. Let's be real, Diddy and Jakes weren't just friendly, they were tight. Over the years, the two appeared together more than a few times, publicly supporting each other and forming a bond that raised eyebrows in both the religious and entertainment worlds. But what wasn't talked about until now was what went on behind the scenes. Gene hints that their relationship wasn't just spiritual guidance and Sunday sermons. No, he suggests there were things happening in the background that couldn't stay hidden forever. And here's the thing, Gene Deal isn't just throwing out wild claims for clout. This man has carried the weight of what he's seen for decades. From the East Coast versus West Coast drama to the darkest corners of celebrity culture, he's been holding receipts. And this time, he's connecting dots that many people don't want connected. Diddy wasn't just powerful, he was calculated, magnetic, and dangerous in all the right ways. The kind of man who knew how to make people feel like they were lucky just to be in the room with him. But behind the designer suits and flashy charm, there was always something off, something dark. People stuck around him for different reasons. Some were bought, straight up cash. Some were lured in with shiny promises, a feature, a record deal, a seat at the table. And others, they stayed out of fear because Diddy had dirt, because he had leverage, because saying no to him meant risking everything. And when it came to T.D. Jakes, he wasn't just around for the faith or fellowship. He was all in. Sources and footage over the years have shown Jakes in rooms that didn't look like ministry. He wasn't there to pray. He wasn't there to counsel. He was there to partake.
Maybe he there to save some souls. I know he got a contract with Revolt, so I'm just like, it's just real strange that he would be found at any kind of Diddy party or any kind of place with Diddy unless it's in a business atmosphere. So now what he's doing is he's making, man, he making the Christians look real bad right about now.
And you been to these parties, right?
Oh yeah, I was there when he was doing the white parties in the Hamptons and the whole 9 yards. So I know what goes on at the parties. If, they probably got a little bit more freakier, as time went on, because they got to the point whereas that they didn't even care.
Diddy gave him more than access. He gave him money, platform, power. And Jakes didn't just accept it, he embraced it. For someone who preached about morality and redemption every Sunday, he sure didn't hesitate to be part of circles where those values didn't exist. This wasn't just friendship, this was alignment. Jakes wasn't an innocent man caught in a scandal. He was a man who wanted a piece of what Diddy had, no matter the cost. And if that meant looking the other way at what went down at those parties, if that meant being quiet when things got ugly, then that's exactly what he did. Because at the end of the day, Diddy gave him everything: money, exposure, a shot at cultural relevance outside the church, and Jakes gave something back: his silence, his presence, his name. You can't stand that close to the fire and pretend you didn't feel the heat. T.D. Jakes knew exactly what he was doing. Gene Deal didn't mince words. He came out and said what most people were too scared to even whisper.
It used to be secretly, where people used to go to, separate rooms and different rooms, and they wasn't doing that out in the public, but now they don't care. Men kissing men and all this other That's just crazy.
In his explosive revelations, Gene called out T.D. Jakes by name, accusing the megachurch bishop of being right there in the middle of it all, not as a bystander, not as some confused guest, but as an active part of the twisted, disturbing world Diddy built behind closed doors. According to Gene, the things that happened at those parties weren't just wild, they were evil. We're talking about events that went way beyond celebrity indulgence. There were girls, many of them vulnerable, young, and manipulated, being passed around like props. There were stories of drugs, control, and spiritual darkness that hung over every room like a fog.
If he's going, we know he's going to the Diddy parties, and I know that it's, I know what usually happens at the Diddy party, or what we told us happened at the Diddy parties. Maybe he need to see it for himself, man. Maybe he need to go there and really be involved in some things that could help save some individuals while they going to those parties. Or maybe he just going to, man, it's hard to even talk about. Why would you find a religious man, when you know that the saints supposed to separate themselves from the sinners? And why would a religious man like himself be at a party which ain't nothing but sin that's going on, bro? Whether it's drinking, maybe fornicating, maybe, like I said, men on men, women on women. It's hard to put in perspective unless he's involving himself what is actually going on at the parties.
And in those same rooms, Gene says T.D. Jakes was present, a man who built his brand on holiness, integrity, and leadership, standing shoulder to shoulder with one of the most controversial and allegedly dangerous figures in hip-hop. Deal didn't sugarcoat anything. He made it clear. Jakes knew what was happening. He saw it. He felt the energy, and he chose to stay. He chose to be a part of something that was clearly immoral and deeply damaging, especially to the women caught in the middle of it. And he was allegedly working with Puffy. To Gene, it wasn't just disappointing, it was betrayal. Betrayal of faith. Betrayal of the public who trusted Jakes, and most of all, betrayal of the countless victims who suffered while men with power, influence, and a pulpit stayed silent. Because if T.D. Jakes was really the man he claimed to be, he wouldn't have been at those parties at all. But wait, then why did one of the most influential pastors in America suddenly walk away? If Gene Deal is telling the truth, the answer might have everything to do with Diddy and everything we weren't supposed to know. For those of you who have been living under a rock, T.D. Jakes' name officially entered the legal storm surrounding Sean Diddy Combs, the once untouchable pastor from Dallas, known around the world for his influence, charisma, and massive following at the Potter's house, was no longer just a spiritual figure watching from the sidelines. His name showed up in a federal lawsuit connected to Diddy, pulling him straight into the controversy. The legal filing didn't come from just anyone. It was brought forward by a music producer who had previously worked closely with Diddy. According to the complaint, Diddy had allegedly intended to use his relationship with Jakes as a shield, a way to protect his image in the fallout following the explosive lawsuit filed by Cassie Ventura, and he needed to have someone by his side because the things he was doing to Cassie were horrendous.
Crazy, man. But to get into this lawsuit, right, Cassie, she testified that Diddy would force male escorts to urinate in her mouth during freakouts.
My man, that's a touchy and difficult subject when you're a man and you have daughters. You understand? And that's why we as men need to play a prominent part in our daughters' lives, because you get men like this that's got this corrupt and devious minds that they don't respect womanhood. You understand? That's some nasty, perverted things that you want to have somebody urinate in the mouth of somebody who gonna be talking to you in your face, who gonna be kissing on you, who gonna be eating food with you. What kind of deviant and crazy mind you have to have somebody do that to somebody that you care about, you supposed to care about, that you supposed to love, man. You know, something is sick about that, brother. You can't tell me that that's some kind of fetish. You know what I'm saying? You know, he didn't outdid R. Kelly with that right there, bro, when I heard that. So that's an effed up subject and situation, man, to even imagine that you got somebody doing that to somebody that you supposed to care about and you supposed to be in a relationship with.
If you've been following this saga, you'll remember that Cassie, a former longtime partner of Diddy, had accused him of serious misconduct, including physical and trafficking. Her claims had already sent shockwaves through the industry, dragging buried secrets into the daylight. Now, the lawsuit implied that Diddy wasn't just worried about legal consequences, he was strategizing damage control. And his plan, it seems, involved leaning on someone with spotless public trust, Bishop Jakes. Whether it was about optics, influence, or access to a loyal base of believers, Diddy allegedly saw Jakes as a crucial player in managing the fallout. Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team pushed back hard. They condemned the federal raids on his homes, calling the government's actions excessive, theatrical, and unwarranted. But behind the public outrage and media statements, a different picture was forming. A picture of powerful alliances, backdoor conversations, and attempts to keep reputations intact. It was no longer just about one man's alleged crimes. It had become a web of influence, and T.D. Jakes, whether willingly or not, had been pulled into it. As the headlines grew louder and the lawsuits piled up, rumors started to swirl about T.D. Jakes in ways no one saw coming. In December 2023, the Dallas Morning News reported that unverified claims were circulating on social media. Accusations that Bishop Jakes had attended allegedly hosted by Sean Diddy Combs. There was no official evidence, no confirmation, just digital whispers that quickly caught fire online. But when your name is as big as Jakes's, even a baseless accusation can cause a storm. Rather than stay silent, Jakes addressed the rumors head on, not in a press release or interview, but from the pulpit during a Christmas Eve service at the Potter's house. With the congregation watching and cameras rolling, he didn't hold back. The worst that could happen, if everything was true, all I got to do is repent sincerely from my heart, he said. There's enough power in the blood to cover all kinds of sin. I don't care what it is, the blood would fix it, but I ain't got to repent about this. It was a bold statement, part sermon, part defense, and it left the audience divided. Some heard a man of faith reaffirming his innocence. Others heard a subtle admission that he knew just how deep the accusations had cut. Jakes wasn't just any pastor facing online rumors. He's the founder of the Potter's House, a megachurch he built from the ground up in 1996. Over the decades, it grew into a spiritual empire with more than 30,000 members across campuses in Dallas, Frisco, Fort Worth, Denver, and even Los Angeles. His influence stretched far beyond the church walls, into politics, pop culture, and now it seemed, into the heart of a federal investigation. The Christmas Eve service was meant to be a celebration. Instead, it became a moment of crisis management, a man of God standing on sacred ground, trying to separate himself from the chaos of a crumbling celebrity world he may have been closer to than he ever admitted. What makes all of this even more complicated is that T.D. Jakes and Diddy weren't just acquaintances, they were longtime friends. Over the years, there's been no shortage of evidence showing just how close these two really were. Photos, videos, and public appearances have surfaced showing Diddy and Jakes side by side, laughing, praying, embracing, and sharing stages. This wasn't just a casual friendship, it was something deeper, something that blurred the lines between faith, fame, and influence. In fact, back in 2021, Their relationship took a very public turn when Jakes launched a sermon series on Revolt Media, Diddy's own cable network. That move raised eyebrows. Here was one of the most prominent pastors in the country bringing his sermons to a platform known more for hip-hop culture than spiritual teaching, but it signaled just how closely their worlds had merged. And now, just as lawsuits and investigations surround Diddy's name, things are shifting fast. This week, Combs sold his remaining stake in Revolt Media to an anonymous buyer, effectively cutting ties with the company he founded back in 2013. That move followed his decision last year to step down as Revolt's chairman, a quiet exit from a platform that once represented his vision of cultural power. The timing of it all feels far from coincidental. With Diddy facing mounting legal pressure and those close to him being named, the spotlight has turned to everyone in his orbit. And for someone like Jakes, who's been publicly and privately connected to Combs for years, the questions are growing louder. Did their friendship cross lines it shouldn't have? Was Jakes just a spiritual advisor caught in the crossfire, or did he play a role in something bigger behind the scenes? One thing's for sure, this isn't just a story about Diddy anymore. Ever since the scandals surrounding Diddy started to explode across the media, TD Jakes has been in full damage control mode. He's been speaking out, calling the claims lies, brushing off rumors, and trying to distance himself from anything that even smells like controversy. But here's the thing, the public isn't buying it. The long history, the photos, the appearances, people remember. What we're seeing now is a man trying hard to rewrite the narrative, but the internet never forgets, and the streets are talking louder than ever. And now, Jakes is taking it to the courts. A lawyer representing the bishop recently filed legal action in the Northern District of California, going after YouTube and its parent company Google. The goal? To unmask the identities of 4 YouTube users who've been uploading content accusing Jakes of attending the infamous Diddy parties and being tied to the darker side of the entertainment world. According to the motion, these accounts are based in Pakistan, South Africa, the Philippines, and Kenya. Jakes' legal team is arguing that these channels are spreading AI-generated misinformation, violating YouTube's own policies, and that Google needs to step in and reveal who's behind them. But not everyone sees it as a fight for truth. In fact, many are saying this is just Jakes trying to shut people up, trying to silence the growing voices calling him out, and bury the allegations before they gain more traction. Some believe he's not trying to stop misinformation, he's trying to stop exposure, because if what's being said turns out to be even partially true, it could destroy the image he's spent decades building. The powerful sermons, the celebrity alliances, the spotless public face, it could all come crashing down. And so now, instead of addressing the allegations head on, it looks like Jakes is going after the platforms, not the truth. To many, that's not a defense, it's a cover-up. Now, with the pressure mounting and Diddy's trial in motion, TD Jakes is stepping back, quietly, but not unnoticed. Just weeks after his name started surfacing alongside Diddy's in lawsuits and disturbing accusations, Bishop Jakes announced that he's stepping down from the leadership of the Potter's House, the very church he built from the ground up in 1996. The timing? Hard to ignore. In an emotional Sunday sermon, Jakes, now 67, told his congregation that the future of the church would be passed on to his daughter, Sarah Jakes Roberts, and her husband, Toure Roberts. He framed the decision as a legacy moment, something spiritual, thoughtful, and long overdue. This is legacy, he said, holding back tears, not because they're kin, but because they're the kind. He urged the congregation to welcome them with open arms, speaking as though this transition was all part of some divine plan. But outside those church walls, many people saw it differently, and some even want him involved in the trial now. One person wrote on X, "Was this guy Diddy's bodyguard? Maybe that priest needs to be questioned in the trial." To them, this wasn't legacy, it was an exit strategy, a carefully timed retreat right as the firestorm surrounding his name grew louder and harder to silence. Because when you've been tied to parties, lawsuits, and accusations that challenge everything you've preached for decades, stepping down doesn't feel like a peaceful handoff, it feels like running for cover. And while Sarah and Toure are being celebrated by some as the next chapter for the Potter's House, others can't help but wonder, now that TD Jakes has officially stepped down, a lot of people aren't buying the legacy narrative. In fact, the streets are saying something very different, and it's gaining traction fast. Many believe Jakes didn't step away because he felt led by God, or because it was simply time. They believe he saw the storm coming, and he got out before it could wipe him out. With Diddy's trial heating up and more disturbing details being revealed by the week, the fear is that Jakes' name is going to come up again, and this time with receipts. His long history with Diddy, his appearances at high-profile parties, and the whispers that have followed him for months have people convinced that he's not as far removed from the chaos as he's pretending to be. Some are even saying he resigned to protect his image before it was too late, because if his name ends up officially tied to the allegations, to the lawsuits, to the evidence, it won't just be public opinion that turns on him. His own community, his own congregation could turn their backs. And for a man who built his life on reputation and respect, that would be the final blow. So stepping down now, before anything explodes further, feels less like retirement and more like strategy. A quiet exit, a preemptive move. Something that says, let me go before I'm dragged out. Because when you know your name might show up in federal court documents, in witness statements, or in viral clips tied to a scandal this big, walking away from the pulpit starts to look a lot like running. When T.D. Jakes finally made the big announcement that he was stepping down from leading the Potter's House, he didn't mention Diddy, he didn't mention lawsuits, he didn't even hint at the storm swirling outside the church doors. Instead, he leaned into something a little more sympathetic, his health. Jakes claimed that he'd recently had a health scare, something serious enough to make him rethink his pace, his priorities, and his position. He spoke about having an attack, about feeling the weight of years of ministry taking a toll on his body. He framed the decision as one rooted in self-care, wisdom, and longevity. And sure, on the surface it sounded believable. He's 67. He's been preaching for decades. He's traveled the world, written books, built a church empire, and carried spiritual responsibility for thousands. It's easy to see how a man like that might need to slow down, but if you listen closely, it starts to feel like a distraction, because timing doesn't lie. Jakes didn't have this health awakening last year. He didn't announce this move when his schedule was packed, or when things were peaceful. He did it right when his name started popping up in the Diddy scandal. He did it after Gene Deal said what he said, after social media started digging, after old pictures, videos, and connections resurfaced, after whispers turned into conversations, and conversations started sounding a lot like accusations. And let's be real, people aren't stupid. They've seen this play out before. Public figures caught in controversy don't always confess. They deflect. They don't say, I'm stepping down because I'm scared of what's coming. They say, I'm stepping down to take care of myself. It's the same playbook. Shift the story, soften the exit, make people feel bad for you instead of suspicious of you. But the internet doesn't forget, and neither do the people watching closely. The health excuse might work on the surface, but those who follow this saga know better. They know this isn't about rest. It's about reputation. It's about damage control. It's about getting ahead of a scandal that's still unfolding. Because when the lawsuits dig deeper, when more names get exposed, and when testimonies start painting a fuller picture, T.D. Jakes doesn't want to be standing at the center of it all. He wants to be gone, out of sight, wrapped in sympathy, hidden behind a wall of wellness. But unfortunately for him, the truth doesn't disappear just because you walk away. So, what do you think? Comment down below and let us know. If you like this video, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be the first to see my next video. I post updates like this every week where I uncover the secrets of your favorite celebrities.